Hey there, Bruins fans! Welcome back to BNG Hockey, where it's always black and gold. Now, about a week ago, the Boston Bruins made a signing, and I have to admit, I didn't think that much of it. They signed 22-year-old left-shot defenseman Jack Ahcan to a 2-year entry-level deal. He's a bit on the smaller side, the Bruins have a ton of defensemen, and really I didn't think it was that big of an ad. But as I started to check out his stats, watch some highlights, and see what other people think of this kid, I started to realize that this might be a piece. The Bruins just added one of their top prospects, and they didn't even have to give up a draft pick to get him. And if you look at the story close enough, it's a carbon copy of the Torey Krug story. So could this kid be as good as Krug someday? I figured we'd take a look at both players, kind of compare them, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Jack Ahcan. Taking a look at the two defensemen, you do see that Torey Krug is actually a little bit bigger than Jack Ahcan. And if that's worrying you, just know that Ahcan could still get a little bit bigger and definitely put on some more weight because he's only 22 years old. Now, before you look at the stats, you should know that Ahcan has played 30 more games than Torey Krug in his college career, and that's because he played a total of 4 seasons and Krug only played 3 seasons. But even if Krug played another full season, it does look like the points would be about the same, so that's pretty exciting if you want to argue that Ahcan could eventually be as good as Torey Krug. Now, when you compare the stats, you can see that Krug had more goals in less games, but Ahcan had a total of 103 points and Krug had 83 points. You also see that the plus-minus is higher for Ahcan. His third season, he was a plus 30 for the year. So it does look like Ahcan is a lot better in his own end, or at least is a lot better at the college level in his own end than Torey Krug was at that time. So that's a pretty good sign. We know that the Bruins can develop players pretty well, and something that they focus on is still being able to bring the offense, but not giving up in your own end. Now, Torey Krug does still struggle to this day defensively, but he has gotten better year after year. It looks like Ahcan is already ahead in the game in the defensive zone, so he could still work on his craft and become a really good defensive defenseman with some offensive upside, even though he's 5'8". So I'm really excited that he brings not only the offensive upside, but seems like he could lock it down a little bit more, and he has some speed. Now, Torey Krug has played 523 NHL games, and he scored 67 goals, 270 assists, for a total of 337 points, and is a plus 23 for his career. That's pretty good, and I'm not telling you that Ahcan will get anywhere near there. But even if he does half of that, and even if he makes the team, I think it's still a pretty great ad for the Boston Bruins. And when you look at some of the people talking about this kid, he had a sneaky good college career, a solid senior year, and he was captain of his team. Torey Krug was also captain of his team. One of the biggest things you hear about Torey Krug, and the Bruins needing to re-sign him after this year, is not only is he one of their top players, but he is a huge leader in the room and brings so much of that chemistry and that energy to the Bruins locker room. It looks like Ahcan could bring that same level of energy and leadership to a Providence room or eventually a Boston Bruins locker room when he eventually makes the team. So I like the comparison between the two. They both went undrafted. They're both mad because they're being ignored because of their size. They can both still play. They can both put up points even though they're defensemen. So they're very, very similar, and I think that Ahcan has a shot at being similar to a Torey Krug someday. Now, I know I went from never hearing about this kid to declaring him to be the next Torey Krug, and that's a pretty big gap, but I do think this kid can contend, maybe grab a spot in Providence next season. Hopefully he works his way through the system, gets better, gets a little bigger. He is still young, so he can still put on some weight, even though he won't grow that much in height. We saw Torey Krug throwing some big hits in the playoffs, so it's doable, and you don't need every guy to be a 6'6" monster. And if this kid can work his way up to the NHL ranks, put up some points, even be a guy like a Matt Grzelcyk, I will take it, because the Bruins got him for absolutely nothing. You can even throw him in a package deal like you did with Axel Anderson in the Kasha Backus trade. You never really know, but it's always nice to have depth, and it's always nice to get a good young piece for practically nothing. So let me know your thoughts. What do you think of Jack Ahcan? Do you think he could pull off a Torey Krug level of improvement and someday make the Boston Bruins? Leave that down below in the comments. If you haven't checked out my last video, I do talk about the Bruins' past 2 signings of Nick Wolf and Jeremy Swayman, so make sure you check out that video. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a big like, and if you haven't already, subscribe.